Here we go again. The Lydian spin with Liddy Lunch and Tim Dahl.
Here
Good
we is.
afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon slash good evening. Of course, we're recording this on Tuesday because me and you are doing a mini micro tour starting
Hitting the
tomorrow.
road, Jack.
So by the time they hear this, they'll miss the first two shows. Wednesday being New Haven, Thursday being
Cafe 9, New
Amherst,
Haven. Cafe 9, New
Massachusetts,
Haven. I've missed it. Yeah.
Drake. But then, if you want to go to where my folks live, where I lived for a while, Gloucester,
Why you
Massachusetts.
revealing that information?
Well, not their house, but we're performing at this
Really great.
Magma.
Everybody shows up at Mom's house. We do a show there. Nice.
Yes, and then Saturday, Prattsville Art Center. So
Prattsville,
yeah,
which I love the name Prattsville. It sounds kind of vulgar.
I hope it is. I hope the
Are we
vulgarity.
ever not?
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't tell anyway.
Sometimes I'm not, but I like being vulgar sometimes.
I've known you to be very courteous at times, and I've also heard you in a screeching road rage over a slight infraction by somebody who no doubt deserved to have their tires slashed. Need I bring that up?
Well, hate is for recreation for me. So all right.
Hate, I'm only paid. I'm paid to hate. I don't do it in my free time. You know me. Speaking of, though, free time, have you noticed since the beginning of this year? Because it's interesting. We're in a place that has not been hit by hardly any snow, not that much rain. We're kind of in a safe zone for now, but the whole middle of the country has been freaking devastated. Do you want to take a guess at just how many tornadoes have sprung up since January 1st until now? Go ahead, give it a guess.
Oh God. I mean, I guess a tornado is technically one that touches down. 200. I don't know.
In most years, 1,200
Oh,
tornadoes
I'm way off. I'm way off.
touched down, but that's the whole year. Last year, there were 1,473. Okay, so now we'll just go with this year. So 461 reported tornadoes in the last few weeks, 59 that were EF2 or above, which means 113 to
Those
157 miles
those are big. Yes.
per hour. Yeah. So we have that, and that was hitting all through, I think, from Texas straight up. I mean, it was, devastating in Tennessee, Missouri, Indiana,
Tornado Alley.
Arkansas, Mississippi, Arkansas. Um, 15 inches of rain in some places, 6 months
Yeah.
of rain in 2 days in other places. Now let's just go on the other side of that divide besides floods and tornadoes. As of March 7th, there have been 10,000 wildfires. Want to guess how many miles
Whoa.
that's burnt
Whoa.
up? Give it a guess.
Square miles.
Square miles, or you could go by acres if you want, but
I'm not really good with the acre.
give it a guess. No,
version.
I had to research.
Fucking Christ. Uh, 1,000 square miles.
How about 474? But no doubt there's
Way
more.
off. Way off. Way off.
But then we had the ice storms.
Yeah.
So we had tornadoes and severe flooding in the middle of the country. We had tornadoes and flooding. Then we had wildfires. I didn't even know Oklahoma had wildfires, but they did. Then we had the ice storms, which hit like the Great Lakes and Ontario, which put out the power of about 800,000 people for a couple of days. But here we are. We're sitting kind of in the lap of only a little bit breezy and chilly today, but no biggie, none of that stuff.
It's colder. It's colder than it usually is.
Which only means it's going to get hotter.
One thing I read was, and I've noticed this. I was asking, this is the windiest spring in over 50 years. And we were talking about that on a couple of podcasts ago about like wind and what the fuck is really going on with wind. But I noticed that. I was like, it's fucking windy a lot, at least around here.
It's been windy, but to no damage to us. Which I mean, considering we are on the coast, we've been pretty lucky. I mean, these storms have been, and the thing is, right now there's not that much storm coverage because there's so much other Mother Nature's revenge, but there's so much other like ridiculous nonsense going on that all of these people in all of these states were facing devastating consequences. we're just not getting that big of an update. Maybe because it's states that, oh, it's not Florida. Oh, it's not, New York. Oh, it's
Well,
not LA.
get
Well, let me
ready.
just tell you, there's a lot of other cities that are being absolutely pummeled by Mother Nature right now.
And they're going to hide the data as every all these institutions are slashed. Regulation is gone. So we're not. They're actually going to hide intentionally what's
I'm a
really going
storm
on.
chaser. So I mean, I'm obsessed with weather. I do think it is Mother Nature's revenge. She's awfully pissed off. I've been saying this for years, and she's just getting madder and madder. And that's what happens when you twist her titties.
Well,
Matter of
speaking of
speaking.
hiding information and the EPA
Please do.
being gutted and then directed by oil industry people, conflict of interest, I would say, but I guess that doesn't matter these days. The notorious Keystone oil pipeline, the one that, if Hillary in 2016 says, you know what, don't build the pipeline, she wins. A long list of things, but she wouldn't do it because everyone in DC is a whore to big money, and oil being the biggest money. Yeah, there was a big bang the other day, and they're like, what's that? And there's been a big leak, as a said was going to be inevitable in North Dakota. All the environments like, we can't put it here, and sure enough, it's happening. And of course, what's going on right now? Oh, it's not that big. We're investigating. We won't tell you what's really going on. So we have
Well,
this.
and yeah, let's open drilling to all the national forest grounds. Let's shut down the park rangers, and let's just turn it all into either a coal mine, a oil leak, or a natural disaster. Because basically, however, I don't know if you saw this about the de-extinction, as it's called, of the dire wolf.
I did.
How cute! I want one of those little white, cute little cubs.
Yeah, those things have been extinct
A
for
thousand years.
longer. Longer. No, they've
Well,
been
you know
extinct
what?
for.
They better get onto that because humans are making them. Well, first of all, most of them should be extinct anyway. But I mean, we're heading towards extinct. The
Well,
thing
this
is, no matter how many disasters there are, no matter how many wars there are, I am always amazed of two things: how much open and free land there is, why are we fighting, and also how many people there still are in spite of every calamity. I'm like, Christ, we're like roaches. We are like roaches. We're roaches.
Well, the biogenetic whatever company that did the, what kind of wolf are they
Dire
called
wolf.
again? The dire wolf. Yes, I I'm pretty shocked, but they claim, guess what they're bringing back, and they're saying it's gonna be 2028. The woolly mammoth. They said they're bringing back that. They
I hope it's a
projected.
mini woolly mammoth. I would love a mini woolly mammoth. I mean, the same way I'd love a mini donkey, but I don't know where I'm going to
Well,
store it.
they say they can make the woolly mammoth, and so
But
I
what am I
think
going to do with the woolly mammoth?
well, the point being is all these things that died in the last ice age, we're going to start seeing. I mean, it's Jurassic Park. Well, this is the
I
first.
say bring back, T Rex, and I mean not only Mark Bolan and the band, but I mean bring back Tyrannosaurus Rex. Let the dinosaurs go to war,
I
because
want them
that's
to.
what's happening anyway. Dinosaurs, human dinosaurs, waging war.
If they brought back the megalodon, I'd be big time psyched. Of course, that will never happen. Do you know the megalodon?
Yes,
That's like the a great white times like 100.
I,
Like its mouth could just like swallow up like
well,
an
maybe if they
army.
brought one back, it could just clean all the plastic out of the ocean, and then we can like stuff it and put it in the build a new natural history
No,
museum. And
they would call that the megalodump. Uh,
make
well, anyhow.
unbelievably,
Oh,
sadly true. Have you
well,
checked your penis lately for
what's funny?
plastics?
It's funny. It's fun. Well, it's funny you
Funny,
mentioned that.
huh?
Funny you mentioned this. It is a great transition because speaking of plastic penises, the war on masturbation continues in Texas.
What?
Senator Angela Paxton, she's demanding checking IDs to buy dildos.
Sex toys?
Yeah, sex
Oh,
toys.
come on.
Yeah, and it's basically she's saying anyone under 18 shouldn't masturbate or something like that.
Anybody shouldn't masturbate under
under 18.
18?
Well, she says she wants to create a law that people under 18 can't buy what she claims to be
Her problem is she doesn't
obscene
have enough
devices.
sex.
Yeah, obscene devices, which include dildos, vibrators, artificial vaginas, basically anything
Once
that stimulates the genitals.
Once again, it goes to prove America can rape, pillage, kill, but you can't have a good time just jerking off.
But there
Even
is
though
no
they're jerking
limit
off
to
all
how
over
many you
100.
can have.
Well, they wanted
Or dildos.
they wanted to have limit. They did
5 minutes later.
before they wanted the limit, but now they want
Yeah.
to do like IDs. I some kids are going to have to get fake IDs to get a dildo, but
Well, you know what? First, get out of
Yeah,
my
but with
bedroom.
3D printing, is there any limit to 3D printing your own dildo?
Have I
Well-
not said, Simon Slater, we should invest? I didn't mean for dildos
Ghost
necessarily,
dildos?
but if you want to use yours as a prototype,
I don't think they make a 3D printer big enough. That's the problem.
roar.
well, that's why you're not showing it now because it's full of. I'm not sure it's full of plastic. Maybe it doesn't need to be full of plastic.
Well, maybe they
Maybe
it's
it's
just full of
encased in
shit.
plastics.
people might.
Well, that's what
the
happens
future
when you
might-
use the back door.
roar. He's going to break his behind him. So, well,
I know. As we started this by saying we were feeling kind of vulgar, and here we go, deteriorated into our natural tendencies.
So the senator is proposing that basically, if you're a merchant or she actually wants the IDs for even internet purchases, and if you sell it to an underage masturbator, or what is that underage? Anyone below 18, based on her,
It's called a teenager in their bedroom having fun
Right.
before mom finds out
Yeah, but-
they've squirted all over the sheets.
She said she wants it so you could go to jail.
But wait a minute.
Oh.
Is it fair to? But why can't you argue this isn't for masturbation? I'm using this as part of a sex act.
Well,
that's.
I mean, soon that would be with the right vibrator.
I mean that's where we're at.
I don't know where we're going with this.
Yeah, well, you know,
again,
it's all over the
again,
place.
it's typical. I mean, if you just view if you just view, for instance, even European versus American films. I mean, America loves any kind of violent overdrive in films, humongous amounts of money spent on making violent action films and war films, but don't show a sexy. Well, it's getting a little better, but is it? Then you still now you can't buy a dildo.
It's all over. Everything's inconsistent and
Get out of my bedroom.
conveniently
Get out of my uterus. Get
criticized.
out of my life.
Except for when it comes to you, everyone picks and chooses.
I think she needs to take over. I think she needs to bend over and take one up where it counts, and she'll realize how much fun it is to own your own private collection.
Well, she's over 18, so she's allowed to do this. She's
Yeah.
obsessed
Well,
with
you know what?
kids
If she
not
needs
touching
help,
them.
I'm right there.
So do you
That's
know
what I
the-
say to all my friends, though. If you need a little help, I mean, I'm right here. Yeah.
Do you know about the Yonaguni monument? This is
Is
one
this
of
in
the-
Cambodia?
No,
Machu
it's between Japan and Taiwan. It's
Oh, do
technically-
tell.
te-
It sounds
technically-
sexy.
Well, it's an underwater pyramid, and they think it's so ancient, and it kind of breaks a lot of preconceived ideas about hunter-gathering societies during the last ice age, and the theory is, well, when the ice started melting, it kind of just sunk, but it's older than
Interesting.
the Egyptian pyramids, it's older than Stonehenge.
And it's pyramid.
Well, so there's debates.
Pyramidish.
There's some geologists who are real skeptics saying this is a natural phenomenon, and I've seen the pictures, and it looks pretty man-made to me. It looks really man-made, in fact. But one of the theories, it's right near some kind of fault, and earthquakes can create all these. I mean, it's like
We
a
have-
perfectly tiered, stepped pyramid with like carved things in it. It's pretty amazing.
Well, this is obviously whatever. There's so much we don't know, especially about what's in the depths of the ocean. We just don't know.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah,
We need to go
well,
down
that.
deep. Need to go down there further. I mean, and buried in the forest and all of this other stuff. I mean, look, nobody knows anything yet. There's a lot more that we don't know, as we discuss in the coming interview. There's a lot more that we don't know than what we do know.
We actually do know a lot, though. It's kind of amazing.
Well, especially you do with your Farmer's Almanac and World Almanac.
Farmers is world. Farmers.
Well, okay, excuse me. I'm with the Farmer's Almanac. You're with the World Almanac. That's
I
right.
mean, well, together we're a force that can't be beat.
Yeah, we're a force
Those
of
two
nature, but we
books.
can't do anything about nature being a force against everything else. 'Cause that's the way it is right now. What are you going to do about it? All you can do is hope it doesn't hit your own freaking house. And a lot of
Yeah.
our friends have been hit. And that's
Yeah. I mean, LA and Asheville, and it's like, Everyone's like,
And
oh,
Tennessee. I mean,
I mean, yeah.
it's everywhere. So I don't know. What are we going to do about it? Well, we're going to hit the high road, or at least the highway, and take
Yeah.
what we do on the road, because that's what we do. Because that's what we do. Because we are
Yes.
here, the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and Tim Dahl, and either we bring it to you or we bring it to you, one way or the other. This is the Lydian Spin with Lydia Lunch and the infamous and possibly notorious, is it now Edvard or Edward Graham Lewis, original bassist, songwriter, lyricist of Wire, one of my favorite bands of all time. By the way, I saw you in London, I think with Jim Thirlwell in 80 to 82. It was one of my favorite experiences, and so many other things. And hello, we're so happy to have you here today in our clutches.
What a delight it is to be here.
Incredible. How's the weather in Uppsala? I saw that's where you're living these days, right?
It's a bit in between at the moment. It's a weird season because the Swedes, in order to make the transport system work, they use a lot of grit during the winter.
Oh,
And
yes,
now we
right.
come to so now we come to this period where it dries out.
So
and it's
sand and
windy.
salt. Okay. All
So
right,
it's just fucking dust everywhere all the time.
Well, let's
So it's a
clear the
nightly
dust.
period. Let's clear the dust.
I have to say, you're lucky, and so are we in New York, because so much, especially of America, had 50 fucking tornadoes in a few days ago. So we're doing okay.
Well, that'll take your mind off tariffs anyway.
Well, trust. I'll send you my latest piece, Demonocracy, and also my Dear Ivanka letter when we're done. But in the meantime, I have to tell you, Graham, your new album is freaking fantastic. No, it's a masterpiece. It really is. And it's so diverse, as you've always been. But I want to go over a few of the songs just so I know you're sitting on it, but I'll blow a little smoke up where it counts because I mean it. What was impressive to me is that it's orchestral but groovy. It's kind of catchy, kind of Eno. And some of my favorite tracks were, well, and then it's called All Right. Is it all right? Like all right? Is that a special word?
Yeah, it's up in Newcastle or County Durham, the people are called Geordies.
Geordies,
yeah.
And one of their favorite words is,
All
whereas
right.
your French would probably say ça va. The Geordies say, "Are you all right?" Which could mean mean various things.
I'm
if
all
you're
right.
In the
right?
But if you're in the wrong bar, it could also mean you're outside and being beaten to a pulp.
Well,
which would be Sunderland, probably.
Hang on. Ian White, who was the drummer of Gallon Drunk and Big Sexy Noise from Newcastle, has been beaten many times in his life just for being him. So we know all about Newcastle.
Or is that just Newcastle being Newcastle?
Well, my experience, my parents and my forebears are Geordies, right? But I only lived there for like 3 years, and my experience of it, this was like 15 to 18-ish. My experience was you got beaten up twice a year, and you never knew why. It's that kind of place.
Graham, check this out. I'll make it real quick, but someone tried to jump me in Newcastle once. I'm only in Newcastle for a day.
I dare.
Once a year. So I don't know.
The guy's girlfriend must have said, "Oh, well, he's nice." And then
No. I
I
think everyone involved was double-digit IQ. It was one of these late night snacks in Newcastle are not so great, but it's the show's over and we're hungry, and it's this really kind of death corpse ashtray gray kebab. They have the rotisserie, but it doesn't look very appealing. And I went in there and I decided not to have it. But something weird was going on, and there's 3 of them. One of them was a female, and basically they're kind of like followed me in, but there was one waiting out. And so when I decided to leave, the other 2 shouted out to this person saying, "Get him!" And the person was standing there kind of like cross-eyed, and I was like, "What are they doing?" I just like walked by them, but I remember the person had one tooth, but it was kind of like a saber tooth. It was like sharp.
It was a human hippo.
It was really weird.
Human hippo.
But they had a really bad mohawk kind of a turquoise blue mohawk that was kind of, and they had one tooth in the middle, and they're like, get him.
But you know what, Tim? You've run your mouth so many times in so many places you could have been killed. You didn't even say anything except you didn't want to fucking damn kebab, and almost got beat to shit.
Pretty much. I was like, you're bad.
Right,
I just walk by it. Yeah.
Enough about you. I want to go back to Graham's fucking amazing new album. So I want to talk about a few of my favorite songs on there. So Last Scene of All, which speeches from, I know you're educated, Shakespeare.
Yeah,
from the
absolutely.
Tempest. I mean, and the thing is, okay, so that's amazing because as somebody wrote about it, that it suggests that life is going out with a bang and not a whimper, which is how I always felt. But there are two songs that really stood out to me, and that's Diamond Shell, which I'm just going to quote, and since I couldn't find the lyrics online, tell me if I'm wrong. I hear you're hearing voices. I hear you're seeking treatment for your sake. I hope it goes well. That's a very heavy and fantastic song. Let me just go to the other one, then we can talk about them. And Bang, which is I've run out of meds. I've run out of meds. Repeated seizures, drifting psychosis. To me, it was almost like a modern Ballad of Dwight Fry from Alice Cooper. Do you know that song where I got to get out of here? I got to get out of here, about an insane asylum?
What album's that on? Which Alice Cooper is that?
I'll check. Maybe, I don't know. I love Alice Cooper so much. Maybe Killer, but yeah, the Ballad of Dwight Fry. And it's about, Dad's been gone for 14 days and he's in an insane asylum. I got to get out of here. But what's also interesting is that, which is such a great song with almost a repetitive. If Marilyn Manson didn't do kitsch and had a higher IQ, it almost has a Marilyn Manson killer-esque horror movie feel because basically there's murder involved. But then it's followed up by an almost beautiful kind of Roxy Music type ditty. So the album is completely diverse, perverse, and really I think it shows all of your better talents. Not that I've experienced all of your talents. I'm sure you have some you've hidden from me. I don't blame you.
Oh, keep them guessing. That's what I would say. Yeah. So where would we like to start?
Well, let's start with that. Like, how long did it take to do this album? Where'd you do it? And it's getting a lot of great reviews. And it's just, I like that it's catchy and weird, groovy, obtuse. Lyrics are amazing. So how long did it take? How did this whole thing come about? It is almost kind of conceptual in a way, but so am I.
Yeah. In terms of how long, the process for it, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's what one's ended up with as a process is quite often. I work all the time, so you do things and you put them on the shelf and forget about them and whatever, and you move on. With this record. I had a fair bit of material, and what happened was it was a couple of years before COVID. There's a Swedish guy that I know, and he asked me if I'd do a little bit of vocal for a record he was making, and so I did that. And being the cheeky fucker that he was, he then wrote back to me and said, "Thank you very much, and I'm going to give you 2 very good bottles of red wine." And he said, "And I've edited what you sent to me." He said, "I think you should come to my studio and try out this particularly good microphone I've got." So this is Max Lawrence. So that's kind of what started, I don't know, the process towards, finalizing, putting things together, finally. And as it happened, I wasn't just going to go along to go 1 2 1 2. So I thought I'd take something new along, which turned out to be what is the last track on the album, which is, sometimes I don't know how you find it, but it was one of those occasions where it was basically the first thing that I came to.
Was the last song.
Yeah, but I always felt. In a way, it always felt like it was still the punchline. You know what I mean?
I understand completely because my book Paradoxia, I wrote the last chapter first and then went back. I understand exactly this concept. Sometimes the punchline then defines what needs to come before.
Yeah. So that was Who the Hell? And the thing about it is that had come out of I don't know, I'd had a fairly grim conversation with this rather intense Swedish artist I know lives in Berlin, and he was going, "Oh, oh, woe is me. Oh God, the state of the world. Oh, oh, how can we make art in the face of such?" And this was only
That's
the
why we,
first. This
yeah,
was the first Trump period,
this
and
is how
and
we
that
make it in the face of this.
exactly that's what we do for a living, and Brexit was going on, all of that. So what I did with that piece was that it's got several of the fucking awful things that were going on in my world anyway. And that seemed like that could be a good place where it'll end up. Needless to say, little were we to know how bad things were going to
Yeah.
get.
Yeah.
So what happened was there could have been a finished record, I don't know, 2019, before COVID anyway. Um, However, COVID came along, and so there was a period where we couldn't actually get into the studio to finish. Needless to say, I started to think with things that I was working, oh, I think that's better. Or I had time to actually think of the context and whatever. And for instance, the song you described as being rather sweet, a sort of love song kind of thing. I thought
Musically.
I thought, oh, that would be a good thing to put in there. The kind of Roxy thing you thought. I thought, you know what I mean? So I'd move things around. So needless to say, yeah, COVID came along and that kind of stopped things.
How did that
Um,
affect Sweden? I mean, the world stopped. I mean,
Well, we
I
know how it affected
myself
Sweden.
enjoy.
Sweden
But
took a more radical choice that was pretty controversial.
that's right.
it was quite extraordinary, actually. Yeah, they did. I
How are the
think
final
it,
numbers with that? How are the final numbers? I mean, in terms of just herd immunity. I
in,
mean,
ter-
I've heard a lot. I mean, people lost
in
their
terms
political careers over it. So,
fuck that. No, but in terms of deaths or whatever,
yeah,
um, I mean, completely comparable to the UK and all these other places where people just panicked and freaked out. What the Swedes did was, I think, they tried to look at the bigger picture, and the bigger picture was let's keep the kids going to school, let's people go to work, let's be sensible about bars. So we'll have waiter service at tables, and the bars will close at 8 o'clock. So everybody can hopefully continue to live. And also, they said, what they said, which was so fantastic, every day they said, we don't know what's going on. And that was the most fantastic thing, because everybody
Well,
was like going, what's
takes
going
some
on? And they were going,
responsibility
we
for
don't,
yourself,
we
right?
don't know.
But
But
also, it's a healthier
don't,
population in
yeah, yeah.
general. It's a much
Well,
healthier population.
but initially the
but
numbers weren't so good. So the original wave was not.
no, 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 no. I
Is that
think
not
that's
true?
just whingy. That's whingy shit.
Okay.
No, the thing about it is, you know what I mean? They have a history of public health. So in that way, you know what I mean? You have people actually believe what they're saying. And the whole thing was be responsible. You know what I mean? Don't go around in big groups.
Yeah.
Be sensible. Just be fucking sensible.
Yeah.
You know?
I didn't
Not,
get it.
oh, if you speak
But
to
did
somebody,
you did you
we're
catch
going to
COVID?
fine you 100. Oh God, yes, but I caught it in the States.
Of course.
I
Yeah,
was
I didn't catch it. I don't know how, but Tim caught it.
um,
Almost everybody caught it. I
no,
wanted to
I
just
caught it
get it over
multiple
with.
times. Yeah.
I
Oh,
I was well. We were on. This is when was it? Oh, well, it's easy to remember when headed for the hills. It was like
2020
Friday the 13th of March.
March. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'd just done our second show at Williamsburg.
yeah.
I think we were the last people to play in New York,
So
and
were
we were
we. Yeah.
in
You were and we
yeah
were. Yes.
yeah, and we were in the truck, in the van, whatever, going to Cambridge, and our agent said it's
It's done.
over.
It's
Get
over.
the fuck out. Because of I mean, our crew were American, all the gear was American, blah blah blah, and after Cambridge, we were supposed to loop into Canada, where we had two sold out shows, blah blah blah,
Yeah.
and then after that, we were supposed to go down to South by Southwest and play three shows there and make some money.
Yeah.
But instead, you know, the shutter's coming down, so we just got the
Yeah.
fuck out of there.
So what were you
And
occupying your time
arrived
during
home.
COVID?
I arrived home, and
Yeah.
I got really sick. I was really sick.
All right. So
Maybe
you
the
got it.
plane
You think
ride.
you got it in New York, you think, or the airplane, or who knows?
Who knows?
No. I had it before that. You know what I mean? It wasn't. It was like chasing hurricanes or something. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? We were two weeks in America, playing in a room with several hundred people
There you
every
go.
Yeah.
night.
Breathing
What are
on
the
you.
chances?
Yep.
I would hate to think it was the delightful young people who'd come up from Buenos
Oh.
Aires who'd given it to me.
Was that? I mean, was that brutal? That because that was like the OG. Corona.
the OG
That
COVID.
was the original one. Were you really suffering? Or
Well,
did you?
oh God, yeah. And in this way, it conveniently fits with uh, the song which Lydia mentioned, "Diamond Shell," which has got a couple of verses in it, which has got I can't remember now. You know what I mean? I hear you hearing voices. I hear you've lost your sense of smell. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So all of that went into that one as well. You know what I mean? Along with losing your marbles as well. I was really sick for like a month. You know, I remember very little about it.
Yeah,
I just
wow.
painted. I just painted all the time.
Well, you painted a beautiful song that's quite terrifying, the heat of your own delirium. So thank you very much for that one.
Was
Yeah.
bass? Sorry, not to. I kind of want to digress from the COVID thing.
You don't want to listen. You
done
don't
with
want
it.
to talk about the new record, do we?
I want to hear. No,
We're
I
done
want to hear
with
the new
it.
record. I want to hear about the new
I mean,
record.
it's still going on, but we're done with it. The record is just, a couple of months, a year old, not even a year old. Let's go.
Was bass the first instrument that you played? Were you a guitar player? Were you a piano player? What was your first instrument that brought you into music?
Bass.
Yeah. So Graham, we're similar that way. We're one of the few bass players that were always originally bass players. A lot of them were
Yeah.
guitar players.
Oh God, they were all when I was at school. They were all guitar players, growing beards and trying to be, I don't know, Paul McCartney or I don't know what's his name, James Taylor or something like that. It never fucking appealed to me.
But is
The
that why
thing
at
that I- the
school
thing-
but
the thing that I heard first, and I didn't know who it was then, was like James Jamerson. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah.
It was like most Motown bass lines, and then I suppose in quick succession it was like Jack Bruce and Andy Frazier as well, who was in Free.
Yep.
And the crazy guy who was in The Move. God, his name escapes me. Incredible bass player, very melodic as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
now, but what year was this that you pick up the bass? So you're interested in the bass. When do you pick it up?
Well, I was I was invited to a Wire rehearsal. Well, they weren't called Wire. This bunch of guys. I knew Bruce Gilbert, and I went along. And afterwards, we went to the pub, and they said, "But you said you could play bass." And I said, "I never said that. Actually, I said I owned a bass."
Good one. First step.
And Bruce,
Very important.
and Bruce said, "This is indeed true." So, and they were like, "Ooh." So I thought, well, shame. That's that then. But I don't know. 3 days later, it was a phone call. Would I like to come back?
See what happens in the pubs?
Yeah, this is what happens.
So-
So I
so
got
you're-
invited
Was this
back.
was this when you were studying textiles at university? Because you studied textiles and fashion, and you were doing
Yeah.
stuff in that vein for a while before you joined Wire or Bruce or his cats.
Excuse me. I'd finished. I'd finished at Hornsey, Middlesex University, whatever it is now. I'd finished there, and I'd actually, I don't know. I think I was about two-thirds through what turned out to be my career in fashion, which lasted a very short time. So I was doing that and being very successful, actually.
But what drew you to textiles or fashion anyway? I mean, that's very interesting, especially considering, in a sense, your music is so
Fucking hell.
textural, but a
Oh, yeah.
fashion all to its own.
I don't know. It's a big subject, really, in the
Yeah,
sense that coming from a very, working class background
yeah.
with the sort of my cultural influences were definitely sort of pop music and fashion. Um, and at that time, this is sort of like early 70s, mid 70s, there was no such thing as an art scene in the UK. Nobody thinks of that.
But there was
If
glam
anybody,
fashion.
yeah, well, you know what I mean. We had swinging London instead.
Yeah. Before that, there was all the Carnaby
And
fashion. There was a lot of fashion from the mid '60s to the early '70s
yeah,
in the UK. I mean,
yeah,
impressive and incredible, forward
yeah.
thinking.
So you know what I mean. That it wasn't as if there was a possibility that you could, I don't know, coming from where I came from, being an artist of any kind at all, but to be a painter or a sculptor, that was impossible. That was unheard of. And even when I was at art college, you know what I mean, you had the occasional tutor who'd gone to you had to go to New York to get, a stamp of approval or something before you could be anything.
Was there
So
any type of fashion that actually go, yeah, I need to go in there because either I'm going to go in that direction or I got to go somewhere else with it? Was there the same way in music, certain bands inspire you or bases to pick up who in fashion or
yeah,
textile inspired you? Or just like, there's a
it,
hole, I
it,
need to fill it.
yeah. In the same way as of that period of music, which is incredibly fertile for pop music. Um, I was interested in pop imagery, and what I was trying to do was, you know what I mean, because I couldn't see how you could make a living, or even there was a future for me to sort of actually go somewhere and paint, if that would be possible, you know.
Because was that
So
your
what I
first
came
love, really? Painting, which you said you were
It
doing
was
until.
I was making these images, and I thought probably they should have been paintings, but I wasn't there, and I got into screen printing because of that. And the textiles people, after a year, they sort of said, so what are you going to do with this stuff?
Okay.
And I was like, what do you mean? What am I going to do with this stuff? And they said, you know, it's, I said, but nobody said that to me, which they had to admit was true. And then after a while, they said, oh, the people in the fashion department, they like the look of you. And I
Okay.
said, really? Mm.
They
So they
like the
said, would you
look
like?
of you. Whoa.
Yeah.
Are
And
you
I
making
thought,
your
well,
own fashions then?
well, you know what I mean? That's an improvement with what's going on here anyway. So they sent me across the road for a month, and it was light and day. It was absolutely fantastic. Great teacher, a guy called Brian Harris, who's he's legendary in terms of art education in London, and he was a polymath, really. And he could do anything. He could draw, paint, make hats, anything. Two of the most famous English fattiers, or whatever the fuck they're called, in the last 20 years, Brian taught. He was amazing. And basically, they said to me, right, if you do the coursework, then you can do whatever you like. And I said, that'll do. Thank you very much. And that meant that I could get on with all the things that I wanted to do, which was like booking the gigs for the college dances, etc., etc. And so I came up with one good idea, which kind of came out of an interest in sportswear, which was quite weird at the time, because I'd seen this guy called Armani at the Wool Secretariat, and I just thought, "Fuck, it's over." You know what I mean? There's no point. This guy's got this sorted out. And I came up with one idea, which was the extra large T-shirt before Catherine Hammett, actually. And the reason they were that large was because I could put my paintings on.
Ah,
Oh,
so pragmatic.
And at the time, yeah, it was pragmatic. But the thing about it was, it's like be lucky, because at that time all the clothes were really skinny. You know what I mean? We all weighed about 10 kilos, and we're on stilts at that time. But all the fashion people really dug it. And so when it finally came out a year later, I had a career for like 10 minutes.
The thing is, you can't really patent a size. You can't patent a size.
No.
Oh, I invented the XXL. Oh, really? Oh, you invented people that like baggy clothes or fatties. Okay, great.
Well, I thought, Lydia, you might represent me in this. You know what I mean? Get the praise I deserve for it. But but as you can imagine, all the fashion people, they loved it, because they were all going to hot places and swimming and then putting these huge T-shirts on.
Yeah.
And I saw one 8 years later on an island in the Mediterranean, and it was such a fucking thrill. You know what I mean? That somebody hadn't thrown something which was disposable. Yeah. So I don't know. It was having a good. I'd had another good tutor, and basically they said, be flexible, be useful. Pay attention. You know what I mean? It doesn't always have to be the medium. I wasn't, I didn't want to be a fashion designer. I discovered that very quickly.
Well, and also having a teacher that had his hands in so many forms of art is very inspirational.
Yeah,
I mean, that's exactly. Like, put your art in whatever form that suits at the moment.
Yeah. It was about, you know what I mean, choose the media. That was the thing. So anyway, you know what I mean? So it lasted a period of time, and
it also gave confidence. It gave confidence, right?
Yeah. It was like, it was like in way, the absolutely fabulous series.
Of course.
That fashion thing. You know that.
Of course I know it.
We have a show.
Every episode, it's fantastic. It's absolutely fabulous.
Well, allegedly, the woman who it's based on was the woman who was the most important PR woman in London at that time. And before my stuff, actually hit the streets, when it was being in production, I was still nowhere. You couldn't get arrested. I'd done some work for this woman's husband. And I went in one day to get some money from him, and she was like, "Who are you then?" And blah, blah, blah. She said, "What do you want?" I said, "I've come to get some money from Paul." She said, "Good luck." And then we were still hanging there. And she said, "So who are you then?" And I said, "I'm the guy who did the stuff that's in Cosmopolitan." She went, "Ah.
Now it matters."
Ah. She said, "Like, have you got a job?" I said, "No, nothing." She said, "Do you want a job?" I said, "I don't know, maybe." She said, and she just picked the phone up and rang this guy saying, "Can you be there at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning?" And then I had a job. Well, it was
doing
a great
what then?
job. It was
doing what?
Doing another collection for this guy, but I didn't have to.
Fucking absolutely fabulous.
All I had to do was make the drawings, and they took them away to Hong Kong, as it was then, and made it. It was fantastic. Best job I ever had.
So actually seeing these kind of like gaps and these maybe opportunities, not just be given confidence, but also just realizing a design and exploiting these holes in the kind of general canvas of the zeitgeist of the time. How did this affect your approach to playing bass? I would imagine it probably did. I mean, the way you
question, Tim, because very good.
All the effects that you use and the angles, because you have your own style, and particularly with bass players, that's often not asked for. But some bass players, there's the bass, as Mingus said when he left the Duke Ellington band, which was the best paying jazz gig at the time. He goes, if I didn't start my own band, I would have had to quit music altogether. So now not everyone asks a bass player to have their own voice and style. So I'm curious if this experience led
or
to
also
that.
to write a lot of the lyrics.
Yeah.
Very unusual. Tim, what other bass players write lyrics? I mean, I don't know that many.
Well, Paul McCartney, I guess.
I don't count him.
Yeah. Who's that? And that guy with the leather trousers? Is it Phil Lynott?
Oh yeah, exactly. From
there you go. Well, you got nothing in common with him, honey.
But while we're talking
Lizard,
of bass players, I just remembered the name of the guy in The Move was a guy called Ace Cafford. I just thought,
another one.
He's really forgotten. I think only Marky Smith liked The Move as much as me. But anyway, when you were saying this thing, the fashion thing that I was doing, in a way, the reason I was doing it was because I had been rather disappointed because I thought that I was going to go to art college and I was going to meet the people and we were going to make, the new English
thing,
rock group like everybody else did. You know what I mean?
Right.
It didn't happen. I didn't meet a
You met in a pub.
Person. I didn't meet a single person. And I was just going out and seeing gigs.
What were you seeing at the time? I read somewhere that Dr. Feelgood, who I have a perverse passion for, because I think they're one of the most sadistic and perverse. I mean, a Wilco Johnson, forget it. And I just thought they were so sadistic and so interesting, even though a bar band. But I mean, Wilco, come on.
It was extraordinary. No,
absolutely.
that I saw them in.
What about Cockney Rebel?
No, that was way later.
Okay.
Well, it was kind of. I'll tell you what. Come up and see me. I like that.
Oh yeah,
it's got that good bass line in it.
I mean, Cockney Rebel, Death Trip. No. They call me Sebastian.
No.
Anyway,
previous to that period, what had been exciting had been to see like the first tour that Roxy Music did when it was really dark. Before Virginia Plain was a hit, it was so dark. It was very, very industrial.
One of my favorite songs is still "In Every Dream House." Hey, heart. I mean, and there's a great version on one of the shows, British shows that I saw the other day because I love this song. It's so horrifying. It's so terrifying. Where there is Brian Ferry, a complete mannequin himself, speaking about a blow-up doll. I loved Roxy Music as well, and I saw them when Jerry Hall sang with them. But still, I mean, until For Your Pleasure, they were creeps, like I am. They're creeps.
Yeah. The first record was the only one I liked. When Eno left, I kind of lost interest in it. Really.
And
sure.
Your new album did remind me of some vibe of Eno, which, I mean, Eno's first two albums were monumental as well. Speaking about a creep, there you go. So I had a little bit of a taste of a bit of Roxy, a bit of Eno in there. I'm not saying your album doesn't have some creepdom, because being one myself, I did respond to that nature in there.
I was just going to hop back to the Dr. Feelgood thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Your response to Dr. Feelgood, you got to understand that it was a fucking desert out there in London. I remember when...
Are you talking about like 73, 74? When?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Before punk hit.
It was fucking grim. It really was grim. At home I was listening to, I don't know, Sly Stone and
sure
Al Green and I don't know, and Iggy or whatever, and the New York Dolls. But meanwhile in London they're doing
favorite New York Dolls, yep.
Americana crap. You know what I mean? It was awful. And there was only Dr. Feelgood, who I saw, who were just in terms of pure attitude.
Yeah.
They were extraordinary. And they were followed by, I mean, 40 real teddy boys. I don't mean kids dressed up. I mean
terrifying teddy boys.
People who would eat you live, And they were extraordinary. You know what I mean? Extraordinary. And Wilco was astonishing. And
Love.
I just really liked them. They were really pleasant people, I thought.
Good
And they
documentary
said,
on them too. Good documentary
yeah,
on them. Like it.
yeah,
Yeah.
very, very good. So there was only them, and I had them. They came and paid 60 quid, and I paid the petrol. And I said,
That
you
would
can
be like
drink as much.
£200 now.
Yeah, and I said, you can drink as much beer as you like. I think you're brilliant. It was cool. And I suppose otherwise it was like Ian Jury and
Right.
what Children in the High Roads, who were playing, a very kind of old rock and roll
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
thing, which wasn't that interesting, but they were interesting people, and Ian was an extraordinary person. But I mean, the music was, yeah,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So
It changed. It changed soon after that.
Yeah, I mean, just in a couple of years,
yeah,
everything starts blossoming, right?
yeah. Well, I
Seemed
mean,
like a lifetime.
No, but
it's always,
in
it's always,
different trajectories.
it was like more weeds coming through the cracks. I think, you know what I mean?
Where were you living at that point? So you were in Newcastle from 15 to 18, and then where were you? Were you in London then?
I went to Coventry, to the Lanchester in Coventry, because it had the best arts festival in the country, I thought, at the age of 18, and it proved to be an extremely good move for me. I learned an awful lot there, and I was really lucky to see, the likes of Roxy Music. I saw, oh fuck, um,
What about Martha
oh,
Hoople?
no, I missed that. I missed that.
I didn't play that often, but Ian Hunter is still so outstanding. He's
Well,
still standing. He's older than all of us.
I have to say, I didn't really.
All the young dudes was about it.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't really like David Bowie really, because it was all sort of like acoustic guitars and stuff, and I wasn't. That didn't attract me very much.
Well, there was a lot of heavy metal. Maybe you didn't like heavy metal, but from that area around that time, right?
Why?
Near
No.
Coventry is right next to Birmingham. Am I wrong? Right?
You are right. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But there was fuck all going in Coventry. Coventry came on the map with Two Tone, really, I think. There was very little going on in Coventry when I was there.
So okay, you meet your pals that are going to be in a pub that are going to become Wire, which 76 was it? About 76?
Yeah. Yeah, the end of 76. It was basically there were four of them, and it was this other guy's group, really, a guy called George. And they put this thing together for the end of, I don't know, something like the Christmas dance at the art school they went to. They were awful. And the thing about it is I had to be strategic, because they had discovered that I couldn't play. So you know what I mean? I had to
quick
pay
learner, I guess. Quick learner.
Fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it.
And then to get asked back the second time, you know what I mean? You're thinking, I'll keep my head down a little bit here and see what develops, and basically learn what the fuck to do. So that's what I did, and what happened was, oh God, this story's been told so many times, but what happened was George, whose band it was, he fell down some stairs stealing an amplifier, and which meant he was incapacitated. And it was one of those, what are we going to do situations. And I think everybody was pretty certain that what we should do was get rid of George, although everybody was a bit scared of that, because he was quite a formidable character. And what happened was, it's like Colin was going, but then we won't have any material because it's all George's material. And I was going, but it's shit, isn't it? And he was like, yeah. And he said, oh, and I went, here you go. And I gave him Lowdown, which is funny. It wasn't till years later when I read it, I thought, oh, fuck, this is a manifesto. But I didn't realize it was at the time. And the next time we rehearsed, Colin came down and we went, And we all started playing this thing, and suddenly there it was. It was done. You know, the man who made all the noise, who screamed and shouted, who had all the rock and roll poses and etc. He wasn't there, and there it was, and it was very simple, and you could hear what was going on, and we thought, oh, it sounds really good when we stop and start together. So the next thing we wrote was like 1-2XU. It was crazy. It just went. In 3 weeks, we'd written Pink Flag.
That no, which is such a monumental and influential record on so many people. Still stands up. So many people have quoted it. I've quoted it and the live performance I saw around the early 80s. And that's the beauty of it. When you know when you have somehow that vision just happened, you knew what you didn't want. And then somehow you made what mattered and you did want.
But it's like the large
quickly.
T-shirt. It's like the large T-shirt.
It's like the large T-shirt.
No, you grab it when it's there and be able to recognize. Not everyone can do that. Very few people can do that, in fact.
And what's weird is still, I mean, I Am the Fly, which is a brain worm. It's a song brain worm. I have to say, every few years it goes through my head. Why am I saying that? I mean, other than No Trend, too many fucking humans, you breed like rats and you're no fucking better. I Am the Fly. Why am I saying that? Why is my head repeating that? Because it was just a fucking earworm.
Yeah. Well, we thought we were rather disappointed because we always thought it was going to be a football chant. You know, with all the clapping and shit, but it never caught on anywhere. So there you go. No,
who at the time when Pink Flag comes out, who were some of the groups you were playing with, or that period? Now we're beyond Dr. Feelgood, and now we're into the early. And again, I hate any categorization, defying all of them, and certainly there is no category for what that music was or what you do, what we do. It defies it. But what were some of the other bands at that period that you were performing with? Because there were a lot of bands at that time that were not punk, that were not art punk, that were post punk, whatever. Magazine, Joy Division, Wire. I mean, it's this other genre.
Yeah, that all of that seems a little bit later, really.
Well, when you started in 76, you got a kickstart.
Yeah, well, exactly. But I think that was the thing with us, really. And I think it's an easier way of describing it is we were a 77 band. It's like the band with the other guy, that was 76. Right. You know what I mean? Once he was gone, then we got to work very, very, very quickly. And then the things that impressed us, obviously, it was the first time we saw the Ramones. It was just, I don't think I'd laughed as much. I don't know, for years.
Me either. I mean? I'm still laughing.
I was just, you know what I mean?
Cartoon rock.
It was
like the Banana Splits.
Yeah, exactly. It was so fucking funny, and we loved the Banana Splits, and so that was that. But like,
I love the Banana Splits.
Who were we playing? We were playing. We had a residency on a Monday, playing with the Buzzcocks. You know what I mean? When they put out Spiral Scratch, which is
I love the early Buzzcocks.
One of the greatest records.
Oh, I mean, Orgasm Addict, Never Falling in Love Buzzcocks.
Yeah, well, I like Spiral Scratch. You know what I mean? I think
good thing we're not fighting over the singles.
That's on the money, you know, that one. And who else? Stranded by the Saints. We like that a lot.
Yeah.
And although it must have been 78 when Peru Bufos came to town. First show they played. That was a knockout when they were doing modern dance and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, and again, all the bands you just name, which they try to lock it into the period by defining it as a category it defies, because all of these bands shared something, but it was not a title you could put on the category of what it was. Even later, as I was saying, Joy Division magazine, Stranded, but so many of those bands were beyond normal rock, weird enough to be weird. We're not punk. They weren't art punk. And why do we have to define it as a fucking category? We don't. It was just good, weird shit, as I like
Yeah.
to call it. Good,
Well,
weird shit.
Well, that was the thing, that we like weird shit, and
We like weird shit.
yeah,
Well, we know each other.
and if it's not weird, then it's not very interesting. Because, like, I remember when, if we're moving on from like 77 or
As you
something
like,
like
yes.
that, I remember, like when we got into 78, and for instance, when we came to New York, which was in fucking hell, July 78, and we Bruce and I, we just couldn't believe how disappointed we were with the groups in New York.
Imagine living there then.
Because they were so fucking lame and all on this bandwagon, until we were taken to Max's Kansas City and we saw you, darling.
What?
Oh,
You saw me?
Yeah,
How dare
yeah,
you?
yeah.
You saw Teenage
Yeah.
Jesus at Max's Kansas City?
And they couldn't believe it. They were going, "Oh, fucking, what did you mean, man?" We're going, "And we're coming back tomorrow."
What?
Yeah,
You
it was
saw me
great.
before I saw you.
Yeah, exactly.
Because
It was
we
still
had the
there.
residency at Max's Kansas City every Monday night, but I am
Yeah.
impressed with your knowledge of my history. I never knew.
Because it was extraordinary, because there were all these no hope fucking bands playing this awful punk rock. You know what I mean?
right.
Because, like, you know what I mean? We knew how it went, and you knew where it went.
Oh, yeah.
But that wasn't interesting. It was like, what could you do with it? You know what I mean? And that's what we were interested in. It's like, how
Did you
could
see
you
Suicide on
rave?
that trip?
No, I didn't. Who did I see that time?
You
saw-
saw Teenage
I
Jesus,
saw-
one of the 10 people there.
yeah, who else did I need to see? And I got shouted at by James Chance while I was on stage, and
He was that way.
yeah, we right up front, and he was screaming, and I thought, he hasn't hit me, he must like it.
Yeah.
It was funny. Um,
Well,
who
at
did we
least you
see?
felt some
Oh,
kindred spirits.
we saw Dennis Brown actually supporting the Talking Heads. That was wicked, man. He was so good. But no, we didn't see Silverstein. But I did.
I'm still
see...
doing the tribute to them, and I'll be back in Europe in May with Mark Hurtado, which is like 2 Ellen Vegas behind me. And as my first friends in New York, I mean, that music still delivers a freaking wallop.
It's astonishing. Yeah. It's
psycho. It's almost doo-wop, psychobilly, romantic psychosis.
Yeah. No, tremendously good. Yeah.
Have a drink. Take a breath.
Were you into This Heat?
Yes. Yeah. The first I saw This Heat, I know what so when I was living in Westbourne Grove, and the pop group, they had a fanzine. They had a fanzine, and they invited me round to their abode, and I think everybody got very stoned, and then they said, Dick O'Dell said, who was their manager, he said, "Do you want to come and see this band, This Heat?" And I said, "Of course, yes." And we went, and they were acoustic.
Okay.
How about that? They only played acoustic instruments. It was quite weird. It was a bit more, sort of early 70s Canterbury experimental English kind of thing, soft machiney. You know what I mean? The influences were a bit more obvious. And then, of course, the next time I saw them, and they were open, they played with James Blood Ulmer, I think it was, and they were unbelievable. They discovered volume, and I remember Bruce and I coming out. We were doing the dome thing then, and Bruce said, "That's it, we're fucked, we're over, pack up," because they were like, wow, it was so good. They really transformed,
Yeah.
Graham, I have to ask you, so in your massive and multi-decade long, very diverse history, how were you solicited to write music for modern dance, including like Michael Clark? I mean, that's pretty
Um,
impressive and weird. And then films, Brothers Quay, who I love. I love the Brothers Quay.
really?
So,
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
I mean, absolutely fucking beautiful stuff.
They've
So
got they've
how
got a
did that
big
come
sh-
about?
they've got a big show on in London at the
Oh,
moment, actually.
Well, if you go,
A
send
re-
my
a-
regards, but you're in Uppsala, so I don't think
yeah,
you'll.
yeah, yeah.
They
With
sent me a book
Michael,
once. They sent me a book once, which I was very happy. I'm very happy.
are you
to have.
yeah.
real quickly? Are you a professor in Uppsala? Because I know it's like a college town. Do you teach?
No,
Okay.
but it is. It's the oldest university city in Sweden. It's quite old in that way. People like Linnaeus and Centigrade and shit like that. But no, what were you saying? You were saying
Oh,
about
dance. I mean,
Michael,
that's
about
such a
Michael
different,
Clark.
totally different thing, isn't it? I mean, how do you
Not
put your
really.
head into that?
Well, I think this is where um,
XXL comes in.
well, this is where the art. Yeah, this is where the art college thing comes in. I love it. You know this quote of Picasso's. Picasso says, "When whenever inspiration comes calling, make sure you're working."
Yeah,
That's pretty much the answer, you know. But with Michael Clark, Michael, when he'd been a student at the Royal Ballet, he used to dodge out of the dormitory, and he came to see us when he was like 16 or something at the Marquee. And so when he got his first opportunity commission to do a piece, and he had this incredible guy, what's he called? Lloyd Newson, who was like a real star dancer. We got, I don't know how he found us, but Michael said, "Oh, can we meet?" And he said, "Oh, I've got this, and I'd like to use 7 things from Pink Flag." And you know what I mean? We just met this young dude and we just went, absolutely. And how fucking good was that? Because Michael got it, you know what I mean, in the same way as he did, then from there, Bruce, who Gilbert in the band, he and his partner at the time, Angela, they were big modern dance fans. They were going to loads of stuff. And I was fortunate enough to tag along and see some great things and didn't have to sit through an awful lot of bad things. So
I hear you. Yes.
what happened, the relationship developed because it was really easy to speak with Michael. So Bruce did a few shows with Michael. I did a show with Michael with him, and when Lee Bowery was in the troupe and whatever.
That must have been amazing. Yeah.
And Charlie Ackles was working. It was, well, you know what I mean? It was just fantastic. You know what I mean? It was like actually working with people. When they said, "Do what you'd like," they meant it. You know what I mean?
Well, and then also you worked with Suon Buto company. Now Tim
Yeah.
performs often with Azume Oe. We did a show together, but Buto's very unique art form, and I think it does call for unique music whenever it uses it. How was that experience?
Um, I think it was a challenge, but a challenge in the sense of Sue N, who was the choreographer. She said, "Right, I've managed to get to perform, and we have in Uppsala. One of the things they have in the physics department, the atomic physics department, we've got a small collider, like not like the big one they have in
A
Switzerland.
mini collider, a mini.
Okay.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
They're making like black holes and stuff.
Well, it's one of these things where they smash I was going to say protons against each other. And she said, and it's going to be in there. And I was like,
Whoa.
wow. And she said, "Would you like to do the soundtrack?" And I thought, too fucking right. I want to be in there. And so I got to go in this place, which was a privilege. And I got to go in the amp room for this place. It made you know that wonderful sound PAs make at festivals, not when they're making music, just when
No,
they're humming, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and you can.
A quarter tone between flat and B usually, right around there. No, at least
Do
in
you
the
know? Do
voltage
you?
here.
That's extraordinary. Do you know? Do you know? Did, did you know that the male alligators call is in B flat, and the
Oh
biggest
well,
one who does the lowest and longest note is the king. But anyway,
that's
so
it. Well, look at B flat blues, like Louis Armstrong. You know, that's Louisiana.
yeah,
So
isn't
maybe
that
there's like a little
extraordinary?
drone
Wow,
from the swamps
alligator
of Louisiana.
blues.
Well, you know what I mean. I wouldn't put it past Louis. He knew
I
an awful
got
lot.
the alligator
Yeah,
blues. Just saying, I
yeah,
got them all
yeah,
right.
yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so I accepted, and it meant that I got into this place, and um, it, the whole soundtrack that I made was a complete lie, of course, because all of the noise, which was quite formidable in this space and so beautiful, you know what I mean? Everything was color coded. It's gigantic magnets and the power of this thing. And so I made a soundtrack out of all of these noises. And of course, the whole thing was a complete lie because the whole power of this thing is in order to create a vacuum where there is no sound at all, of
Right,
course, in
exactly.
order that they can smash the particles together. So, but nobody noticed, so that was okay. And I got another chance to do that later, actually.
No,
To do a soundtrack about space in that way.
well, you know, it's interesting, Graham, because I read this, I know nothing really about physics, but of course, space, you know, there's no sound, quote unquote. Yet the universe does have is a drone. I've read, the whole universe actually has a pitch, according to like Scientific American. I don't know
Well,
how
let's
they.
If
face
it's
it.
not,
How about the room of
This
silence
hum.
that
if it's, I don't believe it. If it's not on Fox News, I'm not believing it.
Oh,
Okay.
you're such a liar. The room that they've invented, whoever this acoustic designer was, which is ultimate silence, very few people
Yeah,
can
yeah.
stand to be in there for very long. Because really, there is no ultimate silence except in this artificial confine. Trust me, I've signed up to go. What can I say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I tell you,
going
I
back to your
tell
point
you,
about the
Margaret, who played guitar in Wire for a few years, she just visited one recently. Actually, last year she said it was extraordinary because like all you can hear is your heartbeat, you know, and the blood
yeah,
pumping around
Yes.
your veins.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
scary.
So yeah. So how do we get into the dance thing? Well,
Well, that's how you got into the
I
dance thing.
think
They
I
asked
think
you to do it and you did it.
yeah, and in a large way, it was because I'd have to say, you know, our friends were generally artists. You know what I mean? They were just our friends. You know what I mean? We weren't part of the rock and roll thing. You know what I mean? That because that's the punk thing. The door opened and we got a foot in and we fucking went for it. You know?
Well, and Tim, let me ask you this because working with Azumi, who's an amazing, beyond Buto, performance artist. I mean, Buto being both life, death, stillness. What is your function in that? What do you get out of that performance that's unlike anything else?
Uh,
I think it's the same as everything else. It's tension on and tension off.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's always the same answer.
Yeah.
You know, it's like how do
I'm
you write
asking
a song?
I'm asking
How
Tim
long's
that.
it?
well,
Yeah, how
asking
I mean,
Tim.
long's the chorus? You know.
I mean, but at least when I work with the Buto, I'm not thinking accompaniment. It's kind of like you walk out in the street and there's a connection, but there's also all these things going on, moving at different rates and
Space
colliding.
again is important.
And you know how it is. If it works, you know that she's a partner that where it works, and she asked me to do it, and then like, okay, we got something here, and you don't always know why a collaboration works, yet you kind of do know. It's like, oh, but you can't put your finger on it necessarily always. It's just like,
I
okay,
completely agree. I don't. You know what I mean? I certainly didn't know what was at the heart of philosophically with Buto, although I know it's a relatively new
yes, it's like free
it's a
jazz.
relatively
It's
new form.
It's
But
kind
at
of
the
Very good.
amazing how
same
It's
this.
time,
like it's free.
No, no,
It's like
okay.
free jazz
I-
dance. You're
no,
right.
it is. I mean,
but I tell you what was fantastic when we were coming to this place is called the Sveaborg Laboratory, where this particle accelerator is, and we had meetings. So it was Sue, the Butu, and the atomic scientists and me, and it was fantastic because you could see it all the time. Everyone was thinking, do I actually believe what they're saying? You know what I mean?
oh,
It's
that.
like because the particle scientists people, you know what I mean? It was poetry what they were talking about. You're just like going, really? And they were going, has anybody proved that? And they go, no, but that's why we're here. And you think, yeah, that's why we're here, isn't it? Because like, is this gonna work? I don't know.
Well, let
But
me
you know
just
what I mean?
interject with the beauty of existence in general is there are more things we don't know, don't understand, haven't experienced, haven't seen compared to all that we have seen, experienced, and have done and will continue to do. And that is why you, Mr. Graham Lewis, and I and Jim Dahl are still alive. And that is why we
Yeah.
have come together here today on the Lydian Spin to profess some of our innermost feelings about why art is the salve to the universal wound, and we are being fucking wounded and we are not stopping. Henceforth, I say thank you so much for your new fucking album and everything else you've done, both to inspire me, and I'm really kind of tickled that you saw Teenage Jesus.
Amazing, amazing story.